Hello everyone, welcome to an episode of Catch Up Cast, and I know I'm sorry that I lied because I didn't think I was going to be making a video at all this week, and there's still no music of the week, but yeah, I sort of only just remembered this over the weekend and I was like, oh shit, I should probably make a video about it. So, I will stress that this is not going to be music of the week. For example, none of these albums are going to be graded, but I'm going to try and go through the albums as much as I can. There's about 8 of them, and they're 8 albums I missed in 2022. There'd be no point grading them anyway, because I listened to them after I'd done my top 30 list for 2022. And there'd be no point grading them because, you know, that would change way too much of the list. And while maybe 1 or 2 of these albums could have made the list, none of them would have made super huge waves, although I will say, spoiler alert, all these albums are pretty good in their own right. And there's also the fact that there's no point in grading them in 2023 because they're not going to be in my 2023 list because they came out in 2022. I just happened to listen to them in late 2022 / very, very early 2023. So yeah, I've got about 8 albums to go through, and I'm going to go through them starting with Angel Maker's album Sanctum. Angel Maker, from my knowledge, are a deathcore band. I'm not going to go over the location of where they're from because I don't think anyone cares about that. Another little spoiler. I'm not going to be doing that anymore for Music of the Week either, but yeah, as deathcore goes, this was like more of the sort of standard deathcore. For example, it didn't really have like the interesting symphonic elements that Shadow of Intent had. It didn't really have the dark storytelling that Lorna Shore's album had from last year as well. But it includes a lot of experimentation, a lot of really daring and fun stuff, and it's not often that you can call a deathcore album fun, but there's just something about it as well. It does stick to some really good themes, and it was easily, if I'm being honest, my favourite album of the albums I missed, and it probably would have made somewhere on the list. I don't really know where. But yeah, it was just a really, really good album, and if you just want some classically good deathcore with not a lot of trimmings to it, you know, that might make it feel fatty in places, maybe give this one a shot. I actually was surprised at how well it came out. Next is the Beths with their album Experts in a Dying Field. Those are a very charming sort of indie punk style band, and I liked it. I thought it was very well produced. I thought it was very well written and performed too. I liked a lot of the themes that go into it. This wouldn't have been one that did make my 2022 list, but it was still a very, very solid case of indie punk. As most indie punk is, I often find it does take a while for... You know, it does take something to elevate the genre for me, but this was still just really good, very buttery smooth indie punk for what it is, and I liked, again, quite a lot of it. The songwriting was very tightly focused. I liked a lot of the riff work too. It was quite unique for the genre. While it does fall into a few tropes of the genre, it's a genre I do quite like and have grown more fond of as years have gone by. So yeah, it's just really, really nice to listen to. Next is Black Dresses with their album Forget Your Own Face. If you're familiar with Black Dresses and my sort of relationship with them, is the fact that I gave their last album 2021, Forever in Your Hearts, my number 5 spot in my top 30 albums of 2021. I didn't even know that they released a new one, and this album is way shorter and still extremely memorable for what it is. It's a very challenging style of like that sort of dark alt-pop thing that they've become known for. It focuses more on the poppy elements and melodies, but don't get it wrong, it's still very focused on its very honest lyrical content and the performances of the 2 people involved in the project. Even though it's a bit weird because I thought they broke up in 2020 because of the bullying that they received for being trans women. So yeah, I found that I found that a bit strange, that they're still releasing albums even though they split. But if they are getting back together, you know, I wouldn't be mad about it. I wouldn't be mad if they dropped a new album this year. Just make it a bit longer maybe. And also, don't make it one that sort of slips completely from my notice, because while Forever in Your Heart was brought to my attention by a YouTuber I watch, you know, it's still one I quite liked and one I listened to back a lot in 2021. This one I didn't really listen to back as much, mostly because it was too late in the year, but still very fun. Fun, about as fun as Black Dresses album can be. Again, a bit dark and grim, but still very light in a lot of its, you know, satirical lyricism, I guess you could say. So, again, another one worth giving a shot, especially if you've heard anything about Black Dresses. They are a band that lives up to that hype. Next we go for a more emo, screamo sort of thing. Foxtails with their album Fawn. Now, this is a band I was completely unfamiliar with beforehand, and I actually quite... I will admit this was probably my least favourite album of the 8 that I covered, but there was still some really good emo-y chops to it. I do think it is an album that embellishes a little bit too much and a little bit too often, but there's still some really good storytelling chops on display. The lyricism is arguably the album's strongest point. It's also got some really, really top-notch riffs at times as well. I just wish the production was a little bit better in places. I think it can come across a bit warbled and uncertain at points, and again, the album feels like it's a bit longer in some areas than it needs to be, but it does feel the structuring with some really good things, and it's not a... I like how they use the title of an album as a metaphor for just look it up on Bandcamp. Just go find it on Bandcamp. There's a full-on explanation for it that explains it way better than I do. I like it when bands use the album title as a metaphor, though. For example, see my favourite example, which is Korean Shyness by Trash Boat. Just listen to that album in general, it's really good. As is this one, much like all the albums in this video, give this one a spin. It's got some really good stuff on it. Next up, we have a band called Gospel, and their second album, The Loser. This was their first in about 17 years. I was quite surprised when I looked that up because I'd only just heard of them and I thought they were a brand new project. Then again, back in 2005, I wasn't really into the hardcore punk genre, and if I'm being honest, Angel Maker's album had a strong case for being in my top 30. There's a very good chance that Gospel's album could have been in the top 20, possibly even top 10. This is easily my favourite album that I completely missed out on in 2022. Just so much rich storytelling, great self-deprecating lyricism, the instrumental work. I love how they mix in prog rock with the hardcore punk riffs. They just match so brilliantly as well. The honest performances. It's produced brilliantly as it is. It was produced by Kurt Ballou. The man is a fucking god. Almost literally, because his studio is called God City Studio, so... a little inside joke, I guess you could say. Just, really well put together. And for an album that's only got 8 songs on it, it's got a lot of really good pacing and a lot of good framing and timing. So, fucking hell. If there's one album I recommend more than any of them on this video, it's definitely The Loser by Gospel. I also really like cover art. I think... I'm not a big fan of minimalist cover art, but there's just something about the style chosen for it, as you'll have seen by the time this part of the... ranting comes across. So go listen to The Loser, it's pretty fucking great. Next we have a band called Off, and I think I have to say it like that because there's an exclamation point at the end of the name, with their album Free LSD, aka Free Acid. And this is a sort of post-punky sort of thing. Think Idols, but a little bit lighter in some areas, I guess, is the best sort of band I can compare them to. This is still really good post-punk, really nice riffs, some very earnest political content within the lyrics as well. I liked how the band put themselves together and actually put a lot of passion into their performances. It's just really well done. It does feel a bit like... It feels a bit pup-ish in its delivery, and that it tries to be a bit too meta with itself, but I don't know, maybe something about it didn't really land for me as well as pup stuff does, but I still really liked Free LSD, the album, not the drug. Just thought I'd point that out there before YouTube kills me and my channel in that order. So another one worth giving a spin if you want some really good post-punk rocky shit. This is good post-punk rocky shit. Next, I'm going to be mentioning a location because it's one of my favourite ones to say. We go to New Orleans, Louisiana for special interest in their album Endure. This is a very unique female-led sort of punk rocky, sleazy, hard rocky thing with very experimental pop and even some metal elements to it and some much darker stuff tried. Of all the albums on this list, this is easily the most experimental one, I guess I would say, and it really surprised me, because it's not just using experimentation to cover the fact that it's got nothing else on it, because this is an album with a lot of meat on its bones in terms of its delivery and its punctuation, I guess you could say. It's got a lot of really important shit to say, mostly because the lead singer is a black woman, so, black feminist punk is my favourite kind of punk, I have to be honest. Any black punk, really. Really well done in terms of that, really well done in terms of its lyrical content, again, very politically and sort of globally minded in that way. I love the riffs, I love the experimentation and how it serves those riffs and really, really informs a lot of it, and as well as the storytelling too. Performances are great, no real complaints. No real complaints about the entire album. Just a lot of really good stuff, and a very unique one, probably one of the more unique albums I listened to 2022. I don't know if it would have made my top 30 list, but it's definitely one I would recommend to a lot of people that wouldn't have made the top 30. It's just a really goddamn good album. And finally, we have Thornhill with Heroin. Now, as people know, I've covered a lot of metalcore in Music of the Week. This is one of the metalcore albums I missed, although it's more of an alternative metal thing, and it's one of my favourite things when metalcore doesn't take itself too seriously. Okay, I will admit it's not a stupidly funny album by any means, but it's a much lighter metalcore album than I thought it would be, and it's still got very serious lyrical content to it, you know? I think there might be a concept detailing a relationship, maybe, I'm not really sure, but the album does shine in its instrumentation, its very unique production, and some really interesting things tried with the structuring too, which is not something I can often say about metalcore. It can often come across as a bit repetitive, like, you know, metalcore doing what metalcore do. But again, this is more alternative metalcore, I guess you could call it, and I am going to call it that because that sounds kind of cool. Yeah, this is just really well put together. It's sort of like metalcore, but dressing up nicely for its court date, you know? It's a very well put together album in terms of its pacing. It's got really good riffs at times. I love a lot of the guitar work on this one. And while I couldn't fully interpret a story, there was still a good story there from what I could gather. And at least it's cohesive and you can actually, you know, hear the words, which is a very dumb thing to say, but it's always nice when you can actually pick it apart with your own ears, and I'm very, very thankful that Thornhill did that. Also, I think Thornhill are one of the younger bands on this list, so they're definitely a band I'll try and keep an ear out for next time. And that is it, and even though this is not an episode of Music of the Week, I may as well do my possible least favourite to most favourite albums. So, yeah, let's do it. Let me just move my camera down, my camera screen thing down there. There we go, so I can see all the albums. So, I would go with an order from least to most, although I still recommend you go find all of these. Foxtails, Off, Black Dresses, The Beths, Thornhill, Special Interest, then Thornhill, then Angel Maker, and then finally Gospel. Especially those last two. Go find those last two, especially Gospel's album. It's really fucking good. Go listen to all of these. And yeah, that's it for this week. I will see you all. Next thing will be Friday for the PBW vs AVW stream, the Halfway Show. So yeah, I'm going to see you all for that. And the next video will either be Fight of the Night, if there is one this weekend. I think there's a UFC card this weekend, or Music of the Week next Thursday. We'll all see. And as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.